Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hop-Ons podcast, a community review podcast, sponsored by our Patreon supporters and enough Claritin to kill a horse. My name is Colin Cox.
Third time's a charm. My name is Jonathan Phelps Sereno. Jonathan, 24-hour Jonathan, to raise funds for me to get medicine to fight this fucking cough that I have.
Yeah.
And what happened? The first time I got it, I was playing in a Magic the Gathering tournament.
Gotcha.
And I thought, oh, I have somehow gotten the COVID.
Right.
And now everyone at this tournament thinks I am patient zero for
Gotcha.
COVID. But no,
Right.
alas, it's just I have the tuberculosis cough that won't go away.
Yeah, so when it was your turn, you cast the TB spell.
I did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really the best way to beat everyone at Magic is just to kill them.
It is.
Yeah.
I said I'm heading out California way to get some of that dry air. That's how. When I play Magic, I talk like an old Californian, like I'm from Grapes of Wrath. Heading out California way
Yeah, when
to
he
get some of that arid desert.
Yeah, when he does it, we call it Steinbecking. So it's like John
Yeah.
Steinbecking. So yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Steinbecking. Why does nobody do that? You know, that should be a thing.
It should. Well, I mean, I think clearly it is a thing. It's just very few people know that you do it. So
I
kids,
do, yeah. Whenever, if you come talk to me and I'm like really sad and talking about how everyone in my family is starving to death,
Yeah.
and we're heading out west, California way, that's when I'm Steinbecking. You know, those are the key words.
My favorite thing is when John starts a conversation with, "Do you remember the Dust Bowl?" And I'm thinking, oh boy, he's going to start Steinbecking.
Here he comes. Here he comes. He's sliding into it.
Oh, yeah, but no, seasonal allergies. Listen, if you are from the American South or live in the American South, you probably know the horrors of seasonal allergies. I have it too,
Yeah.
clearly not as aggressively as John does. But John, we are here to discuss Season 5, Episode 9 of Community VCR Maintenance, a media that you and
Yeah.
I both really enjoy, and educational publishing, John. And that's not the full title. I clearly added a bit of commentary. That would be amazing if it were the full title.
Yeah. So like the communities person, don't add us
Don't-
with that. We know he fucked it up. He was just goofing.
I was Steinbecking. Have you never
Yeah.
read The Grapes of Wrath?
God damn it.
John, this episode originally aired on March the 13th, 2014, directed by, I say, Tristram Shapiro. Written by Donald Diego. John, this is your IMDb plot summary. Wild
Yes.
stuff. Okay, this is not me editorializing. This is actually
Okay.
on IMDb. Whilst cleaning
Okay.
the storage room, Jeff, Hickey, and Shirley find a pile of unused, hidden textbooks and plot a way to make the best out of it. Meanwhile, Annie and Abed are trying to find a new roommate.
Okay. Well,
I mean, aside from the anachronistic use of whilst, not bad.
whilst, anachronistic use of whilst. All the things you've said, I don't know what any of that means. So,
It's the working title for the new Wes Anderson movie, so it's fine.
all you just said a whole litany of words that
litany.
my brain
Pete,
right now
are
is
you
like
listening?
a bowl of alphabet soup, and I am slowly when I pick the spoon up, I see words spelled out, and I go, I don't know what that means, and that's just what's happening
Listeners,
in my brain.
Listeners, he just used the word litany. You know, John.
What?
He.
Oh God.
Okay.
It's gonna be one of those nights. I'm not even drinking tonight, which is
That's
an
true.
absolute shame.
I know, because you with both alcohol and allergy medication is, well,
Oh,
it's one of my
I'm a
favorite kind
blast.
of John's.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And while he's Steinbecking, can't beat it. Can't beat it.
Maybe I'll take a break and go shoot some gin. I have some gin upstairs.
I think you
chug
should
that.
just bring it down. John, for a bit of context, and I just saw it. That's pretty good. On ABC, Once Upon a Time in Wonderland at 2.1.
Yeah. No, this is the spinoff to the sequel of Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. So all they do is they follow Johnny Depp around in character as he goes to different stores. He goes to Target as the Mad Hatter, and
Oh, I was thinking it was.
people.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was thinking it was a narrative that chronicles his attempts to sue people who have credibly claimed that he sexually assaulted them.
Oh yeah,
There's a reason
Yeah,
why
that
it
could
wasn't
be
a
that
popular
too.
show. Anyway, I believe Amber Heard. John, on CBS, Bazingers at 10.4.
What a name!
What a name.
What a name! They should one season do that. When it was on the air, they should have go back, change it, don't tell anyone, and see if how many people keep watching. The people love Sheldon. They watch
It just-
Bazingers.
yeah. It all started with a big Bazingers.
Oh yeah,
John, big winner. Bazingers on CBS.
Yeah.
It's fun to say. On Fox, John, some new competition. And boy, oh boy, your risotto better be on point. Hell's Kitchen at 3.3.
you fucking donkey. Yeah. Here we are. I don't. Hell's Kitchen is not my favorite. I'm a Gordon Ramsay fanatic. I love this man quite a lot. I have watched every episode of Kitchen Nightmares. That's not a lie. I've watched it a lot.
Oh,
They're
wow.
bringing it back. I'm so fucking stoked. I've watched Hotel Hell, which is one of the best shows that genuinely has ever been made. It's so fucking funny and weird. This man can cut people down the way that Michelangelo would use marble to make the statue of David. It's sort of a phenomenal way that he works
Sure.
in his own medium, is just to swear at people until they cry. I love it immensely.
Yeah,
Love it.
I don't like Gordon Ramsay so much.
No, it's understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the funny thing. It's not because of shows like Hell's Kitchen. Maybe it should be. When he did Hot Ones, it really felt like he just gave away the game. Like, all of this is just an aesthetic for him because he swore
Well, yeah, of
so
course,
much.
yeah.
And I mean, like, sure, it is just an aesthetic, but I mean, at least allow us to suspend our disbelief a bit. It's just dude, he was so hammy on those Hot Ones episodes.
Yeah, but when I did Hot Ones, I did it full character as John Steinbeck, so
That's true.
you can never really believe what you see when you watch Hot Ones.
Well, I haven't had chicken in 6 years.
The last chicken I had to kill it with my bare teeth.
Whilst others were eating the chicken, I was eating dust in a bowl. Have I spoken about the dust bowl?
I hope I use whilst in a
In a non-anachronistic way. Now, see, we need to be careful because we're like quickly, John, we are quickly devolving into like Colonel Sanders territory. So we need
I
to be careful.
literally have just turned into Foghorn Leghorn for no reason. I say, Sean Evans.
John, regrettably, Big Loser. Community on NBC at 1.8. So, John, this episode, again, VCR media, the VHS media is quite popular and quite prevalent for this episode. You and I have spoken about my 4 years working at a video store, which was interesting. It was
Yeah.
from 2000 to 2004, and so I was witness to this transition from VHS to what I do. Do DVDs still exist? I mean, I know they still
Oh,
exist,
yeah.
but like
They do.
Blu-ray is now the popular medium.
Blu-ray
right?
is like the medium that people buy, but yeah, they still make DVDs.
Okay.
Not as like many things. I like DVDs because I like to like stream movies on Discord, and I don't have a DVD player. I just have a Blu-ray player. Excuse me. So I buy DVDs, and used DVDs are so cheap, and I like to find obscure ones. But yeah, I can remember that little moment in time when VHSs were slowly fading out. I got my first DVD player in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you youngsters out there that you don't know, that was a big deal. My first DVD I ever owned was Romeo Must Die, starring Jet Li and Aaliyah. That was the first.
Boy.
That was the first one I had. I loved that movie. I think the first like 4 movies I bought were these Jet Li movies. It's like all I had. But yeah, that was a fun time. I think this made me remember when I was very young, my family had a VCR board game that I played by myself. I didn't have any siblings. It was just a game where you paused the screen. Well, you didn't pause it. You played it and like it was a picture and you had to pick out. it was like find 5 candy canes, and it was this like huge abstract picture, and you have to like find them. And I didn't play against anyone. I just watched it over and over and over. It was like this calming thing. That's the only VCR board game I had, though. Did you have any of these?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this because I did not actually. I think I knew that these existed, this kind of interactive VHS, VCR medium, but I didn't. John, I don't know. Could you guess in 2000 the first DVD that we actually shelved at the video store? It would have been like a big popular movie in 2000.
I would say you probably got The Matrix. That would be the one I would.
No,
if I had to guess.
Unfortunately,
what was it?
It was The Green Mile.
Oh, okay. People love that fucking flick. Not for me, but I get it. I get it.
It was so long, John, it had the 2 VHS because we shelved both. So it was DVD and 2 VHS tapes. So
yeah, I can remember there was at one point a DVD I had that was so long it was a 2 DVD set, and I thought, what is this? Maybe like Godfather 2 for some reason had to have 2 DVDs for some reason. I don't know. Anyway,
well, I think
it's a weird time in life.
I think I still have the box upstairs where, Godfather Part 2 is a 2 DVD situation. I told you about the first time. I think I mentioned it on the podcast. The first time I watched Goodfellas, I didn't realize it was an A-B DVD situation, but there wasn't, like, the language was really small. So I started watching Goodfellas on the B side. And John, it starts with the Ray Liotta character, his wife, just pointing a gun right at the camera. And I thought,
oh, you've missed a lot.
Yeah,
you've missed a whole lot at that point.
Half of the movie.
Lorraine pointing a gun at Henry Hill. She finds out he's cheating on her. Yeah, that's
correct.
You've missed a lot. What a flick. Let's talk about Goodfellas instead of this episode. Also, I just didn't like this episode that much. Is what
explain? Go ahead.
Is what I'm leading into. It's an episode that apart from the Dean's rap, which is so good, and Chang is really fucking weird in this episode. He's very funny. I think it's a rather forgettable episode. I read this great little snippet about it where someone said, it's a fine episode of the show that really shows what Community is sort of known for, these like homages and parodies and things along those lines. But if you were to ask someone to name like your top 10 favorite episodes, this one would never hit the top 10.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. It's a fine episode. It's not the most memorable. I didn't, and by no means did I dislike it, but it's not something that I have a whole lot to say about. I think the plot with the books is way more intriguing to me than the plot with Abed and Annie. So we could spend some time discussing that. But how did you feel about it?
So I like watching this episode, but I would never recommend this episode to someone, right? I think it is intriguing.
Okay.
I think the book narrative, especially the ending, right? And I want to talk about, this is something that I didn't realize until today. The creator of Breaking Bad, his name is Vincent Gillian. Is that right? Did I get it right? Or Vince Gillian?
Vince Gilligan. How'd you miss Gilligan? Like,
I think it's because
from Arrested Development. Gilligan?
Well, this is what I mean. I always assume that no one actually has the name Gilligan. So I always assume it's like Gillian or something. No, I got all that wrong. The Breaking Bad guy, John, had no idea until today that what would you call him? The host of the interactive game?
Yeah, I guess so. He's the pile of bullets. What a name, by the way, for a game. He's the pile of bullets interactive host.
Interactive host. That's a great way to describe it. Yeah.
And we find out he has left his job at Apple, and now a company that's about to go public. He has left Apple completely to join the VCR board game revolution. Sure.
And we can talk about this because I think there's clearly a joke the Bumpers wants to make. But John, in 1993, Apple was not the company that we thought I think you know this, right? That Apple was not the company. Like, they were in a really precarious situation in 1993.
They were.
Yeah.
But they were going to eventually be worth a whole lot of money. If so much money.
Yeah. If only we could predict the future, right? But I want to talk about the end of this episode because I think it feels distinctly different from what we often see with Community. And I think maybe you could imagine by including someone like the guy who created Breaking Bad, who I now refuse to name in any way because it's embarrassing when I try, the influence of a show like Breaking Bad, because that narrative feels like the kind of thing you would see in Breaking Bad. I told you, I think there's a way of imagining Shirley as someone who breaks bad in some way in this narrative, and she really adopts this like Heisenberg ethos, right? But you never have a moment at the end of a Breaking Bad episode where a character frames the events of that of that particular episode in a way that reminds you of something like Jeff Winger, because of course Breaking Bad is not it's not a sitcom, right? The B narrative, again, I mentioned this maybe in our last episode. I think obviously this exploration of what the loss of Troy means, I think we see it definitely with Abed, but maybe more so with Annie here. So this is another moment where the show wants to explore and register the loss of this important character. And to this point, I don't think the show's really asked, well, what does Annie think about this? How does Annie feel about Troy's departure? And that's clearly what we get there. But yeah, it's not a bad episode. I always remember the thing we discuss about a show like Frasier, or something Kelsey Grammer said, which, by the way, it's coming back. Did you see the trailer for the new Frasier season?
I saw the teaser that was just like the outline being drawn.
Oh, so there's a full trailer now.
Is it bad? It seems like it's going to be bad.
John, he returns to Boston.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's back in Boston.
Does he run into like the Cheers people?
We don't see any of them. It seems to be so in the same way that like Frasier was a show about a son whose father imposes upon him. Frasier now becomes that father imposing upon his son. That's basically what the trailer seems to suggest. So,
who's playing Frasier's kid?
It's crazy, Don Cheadle.
Oh. Oh my God. Anyway, Colin. Baby, I hear the blues. Colin, let's talk about.
No, but I just that thing that Kelsey Grammer always said. You know that, like, some episodes of a show simply do the business of like producing a season of television, right? That like not every episode can be exceptional, and some of them just need to be average. Some of them perhaps at times even need to be bad, and that's how I think about this episode. This is just a fine episode that needed to fill a 13 episode order, and that's okay, you know?
Yeah, we forgot to introduce our new patron, Colin. That was a while ago. Do you want to record that later and then stuff that in?
Well, yeah, we can do that, or we can always mention it at the end. Okay. However you want to do that, or we can just mention it now. I can just keep all this in. So, hey, John, dude, new patron, Thomas. Hey, Thomas, welcome.
Tommy boy, Tommy, how's it? How you doing, mate? Tommy, is he from Australia? Because if not, that's going to be a weird thing that I just did.
I see no indication that he is from Australia. So,
good day, mate, Tommy.
And as always, you can support the podcast if you want on Patreon, patreon.com.
I wouldn't. It's real. It's just this times a million. All right, let's talk about the episode proper. Colin.
John.
You want to begin with Abed and Annie? I would rather start there because I don't really want to talk about them that much.
Yeah, so let's start there. So I marked that as the B plot, right?
Oh, I don't think so. I saw that.
Okay.
I don't think so at all. I think that's the much more important plot. The book plot has literally no ending. There's nothing. There's no resolution. There's
Which is interesting, right? Yeah.
it just sort of fizzles, and then you go, okay, well, that's
Yeah.
it. It's over now. But yeah, so Abed and Annie, we figure out that they are sort of in dire straits and need a roommate because they're having trouble making payments to rent and also affording to eat, much like everyone right now. And so they decide. Abed asks if Rachel can be their new roommate, and Annie wants her brother, who we find out she has a brother named Anthony. That had to be a very terrible childhood growing up.
Sure.
Annie and Anthony.
Yeah.
She wants him to become the new roommate, and so we have this sort of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf-esque situation where they're all sitting around and Abed and Annie keep comparing their choices to one another in this weird game of one-upsmanship that Rachel nor Anthony have any idea what is going on. So, yeah, it's done in a way that I wouldn't even say it's uncomfortable. I think it's in a way that is just incredibly annoying, and I felt so bad for both Rachel and Anthony, especially Rachel, who multiple times says, "Can I please just leave? I feel like you're going through some things, and I would like to go." And she is held prisoner there. So, yeah, it's an uncomfortable little moment, I think.
And the return of Alison Brie as Rachel, and I think this might be the last time we see her in the show. So.
You mean Brie Larson? You mixed all that up. You did say Alison Brie. Colin might be drunk tonight, everyone.
And I'm actually not. But yeah, I meant Brie Larson. So this is the return of Brie Larson. I believe the last time we see her as Rachel. Really quite nice, even though, again, she doesn't have a lot to do. I think she's really nice in this episode. No, not nice?
No, she is. I'm confused. Why she doesn't come back? This is it.
I don't think so. I think this is it. I think this.
What are they doing then? Why? I mean, why put so much effort into this if she's not going to come back?
I could be completely wrong, but this also feels very. This feels indicative of the kind of thing we see in a sitcom, right? I mean, think about what in season 3, John Goodman. How many episodes was he actually in? Right?
Okay, you're not wrong. Yeah,
but I think because again we've talked about this before. Narrative considerations are not often the most important ones. It's entirely possible that Brie Larson was contracted for 2 or 3 episodes, and these are those 2 or 3 episodes. But I agree with you. There is something incredibly uncomfortable about all of this. But John, the thing that I really wanted to talk about is how this narrative seems to suggest that Annie and Abed are not so different. And I think we often think of them as incredibly different characters. And I think we've spoken about this with characters like Annie and Jeff, right? That the show wants to emphasize this point at times that while these two characters want to think of themselves as different, maybe they're not so much. And I was curious because I think this might be the first time the show has suggested that Annie and Abed are frighteningly similar in ways that we would never account for because the show has not brought it to our attention.
Okay. Yeah, I that's a very good point. Yeah, I don't think we've seen Annie as a person who, even in this episode at the beginning, she is someone who is very organized and oriented with her emotions and her thoughts. She tends, but again, that's a lot like Abed. They both tend to like routine. They both tend to like some type of normalcy. And now we are saying, because Troy is gone, there is no routine, there is no normalcy anymore for these two people. And yeah, that's a very good point, that we're saying that Annie is a whole lot like Abed.
Yeah, and again, as you said, this organization taken to a point that it feels maybe self-destructive. And we've seen this from Annie in the past, right?
Sure.
But I think, again, this is potentially an episode that wants to suggest that the loss of Troy, his whimsical ethos, seems to push Annie towards this extreme of what her character can be. In the same way that we saw in that plot with Hickey and Abed, how Troy's loss seemed to push Abed toward an extreme of what he could be. We're also seeing Annie's hyper competitiveness here, because this is not just about choosing a roommate or even choosing the right roommate. It's choosing the roommate Annie wants. So this becomes a competition for her. And again, we're seeing what happens to Annie when maybe she doesn't have a figure like Troy to moderate some of those impulses. This is what she does. She just becomes so incredibly aggressive that she becomes, I don't know, impossible to live with, talk to, etc.
If she had that balance, there would have been a moment early on when they were quote unquote playing this game to see who the next roommate's going to be, where Annie would have been the one to realize maybe we should ask them if they actually want to live here instead of just assuming this person wants to change their whole life and come live with us. And never once is that brought up at all. They're both just very hyper focused on this weird competition, this competitiveness that we've seen from Abed in the weirdest ways. And Annie, from time to time when she gets roped into these things, she really does go pretty hard on it. But I think here it's just it's in the back of her brain that maybe I should not be doing this way.
Yeah, and again, I think this is an interesting moment of symmetry between the A plot and the B plot, right? What happens when someone or a character is forced to maybe do things they are not naturally inclined to do, because it also feels like Annie and Abed both break bad to some degree, right? Abed almost leverages his relationship just to win. And
for sure.
But I think Abed's motivations, and he even mentions this early, his motivations are a little different. This is not just about finding a third roommate. For him, John, it feels like there's something symbolically significant about having Rachel live there. And for Abed, it's connected or tethered to his thoughts and feelings about this particular romantic relationship and the way he's accelerated it. So I almost have the impression for Abed, and he mentions this near the end with his third act apology, that he's behaving while Annie's not motivated by fear and anxiety in the same way. It feels like she's motivated by just this unbridled need to win. Abed's motivations are maybe more complicated, more complex, and for that reason, potentially more understandable, I guess, even though Annie tries to frame it like having you here would feel like winning against mom. I don't know. And maybe it's just because the episode doesn't establish that until the end. But I guess Abed's motivations seem more understandable to me than Annie's, at least the way they frame it at the end.
No, you're right. I hadn't thought about it that way. But it's very childish. It's a very childish little segment to this episode. It's a plot that, and Anthony's a character who, at the beginning, starts out he seems so simple-minded. I think the way they're playing him, and then by the end of them playing the game, you realize that he's not simple-minded. He just only speaks when he needs to, and realizes at this moment that you guys have some issues and you should work on them. And how dare you blame things on me? I was a kid, and so I think that's a pretty big takeaway from the episode, is that I think Annie doesn't even realize what she's holding in against her own brother, the things that probably she shouldn't be compartmentalizing anymore,
Yeah, and it certainly feels like Annie does this, maybe not often, but enough that this doesn't seem surprising. But I also I like what you were suggesting about Anthony and how he does seem incredibly simple, but I think what the episode wants to imply, and we see this with Rachel as well, is when these incredibly forceful characters like Abed and Annie try to coerce them into something, their power is their ability to opt out, basically. And I really dig that a lot. We often think about how we frame and characterize people who opt out. It's typically negative, right? But I really like this idea that there's power in opting out of something, not choosing an alternative, just almost choosing not to choose, I guess. And that's something that I like here, because that's what it feels like these characters do, right? Neither one of them said, "No, I will not live with you." They just said, I will not be party to this nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And that's I think, and that's something again you see in the A plot, right? Is Jeff tries to opt out of what's happening.
Yeah, but I mean, only after it's gone.
Unlike, yeah,
really off the rails.
yeah.
But yes,
I know. I think his is a little different, right? But he certainly tries to opt out. But we also see maybe what happens, not necessarily the consequences when one tries to opt out, but how disruptive and perilous opting out is. But that's one of the reasons why I really like it, is because I think something that both Abed and Annie need, and I think maybe in some respects a lot of people who are like Abed and Annie, what they need is to have someone challenge them and opt out like this. And I think that's because that's disruptive, right? And we often do not know what to do with or how to compartmentalize those kinds of disruptive figures. But I really like it here. This is good, I think. I like this. Yeah.
we should really talk about the game.
Yes.
Pile of Bullets.
Yeah.
The writers of this obviously have a friend, like I do, that is obsessed with board games, and they want to play every board game with you. So you go over, and it's never just, let's play Clue. It's always, let me bring this game out. It's going to take us 4 hours. Let me begin to read the rules to you. And the rules are the hardest, most complicated. It's like Dostoevsky wrote these fucking things. And you go, by the time they're done reading is when I turn into the opt-out guy and go, I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to go ahead and just step on out of this. And the person that wrote this has obviously done this before, because that's how I felt. I felt very seen in that moment. The rules to this game, for the life of me, I don't know what they are. Apparently, you point and say bang when anything's on screen, right?
So part of what's both interesting and funny about this, and the reason why this is necessary, why they do this, it's impossible to know because we don't see all of it, right? We only see, I mean, again, imagine if someone showed you 3 random minutes of this episode. Could you like confidently describe the episode? No, of course you couldn't. That's what we see here, which again, they make this decision for 2 obvious reasons. It's the same reason why we never really learn all of the details. We never really learn all of the details about Cones of Dunshire from Parks and Rec, because the point is, it's like absurdly complex.
Correct.
What's the review of one of the expansion packs? Painfully intricate, I think is what. That's what this feels like. It's painfully intricate. And I think that's part of what makes it funny, is that we only have, like, why do they stand and shout bang bang? There's a whole like tornado move
Tornado
you need
time
to make.
is so good.
Tornado time.
You have to say yeehaw
I don't
at a certain moment.
Right. I don't understand how like the gold exchange works. It's just all incredibly silly. But again, I think one of the reasons why this matters, John, is because we see that both Annie and Abed, and it doesn't surprise us, I guess, that Abed gets it so quickly, but I think it maybe does surprise us that Annie does, because this feels like Abed's territory, but we see how successfully Annie can navigate in this territory when she's motivated to do so. So like seeing the 2 of them understand it as quickly as they do, and seeing Annie really indulge in this, again, this is an episode that wants to suggest they're not so terribly different, these 2, you know, they're frighteningly similar. But yeah, no, John, this game, painfully complex. I have no idea what any of this is.
Yeah, there have been, I mean, it reminded me, there have been moments when I have almost fallen asleep when someone has been reading the rules to a game. And what I love about this game is they give you at the up front, because we see the start of the video, and the very first thing they say is so convoluted you don't even know what the point of the game is, because Rachel's even like, are we supposed to be robbing the town? She doesn't even understand what she's supposed to be doing. And then he says, you know, if you see your number or another colored number of a colored player's number token that's playing with you, then you stand up and say bang. If you see a 5 on the screen, you say bang, and the number 5 character with the green token gets gold. What are you doing? What's happening?
I mean, and it feels like at times, John, the end of the game feels like the end of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where like the game wants to make a critique of the Industrial Revolution or something. It's like, what the fuck is this now? Like,
That's my favorite part, by the way,
game?
is when he puts on the conductor's hat, and he says, "Modern times are coming in."
What is this?
It's so good.
I know.
It's so good.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know. I mean, so why do you think this is here? Is this as simple as one of the writers knows a guy and they thought, let's have some fun with this? Does it complement some of the other narratives or themes explored in this episode? Why is this here, John?
Well, I mean, it works with Abed, a character who, is like steeped in nostalgia. He loves things from his past, things that he remembers as a kid, probably. And so, and also it's a gift from Rachel, who, knows Abed and knows that he would like something this crazy. And I think it's also here because maybe, again, I think that's a good point, that a writer thought, what if we just mention these things that used to exist? And we just shove it in here. And also, for some reason, we have Vince Gilligan for a day. Why don't we just use him? And the man, I didn't think he was an actor, but he's so good at this because he's
funny,
essentially just playing like a director, basically, is what he's doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, he is he not?
Yeah. And so I think it's a combination of things. I think, a writer thought, let's bring this up, and also this is something Abed would like. I'm someone who, even when I'll go to like an antique store or a flea market and I see a clamshell cassette of like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I'm like, oh, I have to have that. I don't have a VCR. I just want that in my house, And so I think, I think that's just, we are a generation like Abed's that's rooted in nostalgia, and things from that time make us feel good. So, this is just a little piece of a lost memory that not a lot of people realize was even something that existed,
And I mean, in that way, it so beautifully complements this idea that Troy's this like lost object that we need to try to desperately engage with as much as we can, You almost have the impression that Rachel bought it for him as something not unlike those pictures of Troy that he could hang, that he could keep, just to have as a tchotchke, right? But
sure,
both he and Annie, they need to engage with it. And it feels like what they're really doing. Like, this is a proxy for engaging with the memory of Troy. And in the same way that the game suggests we must move beyond, because
oh my God, he got
things
there.
are constantly changing and evolving. Annie and Abed need to move beyond Troy. And so that's why I think this needs to be the third episode of this trilogy of episodes exploring the loss of Troy. They need to move beyond this because they cannot just live in the past with Troy.
I don't think I ever would have got there, but you're not wrong. That's absolutely something that's stated. I don't know. Is that purposeful, Colin? I don't know.
What do I always say? Who cares?
Okay.
Who cares?
Well,
yeah, because Troy becomes this nostalgic object, right?
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's fascinating. All right, let's move over to the Breaking Bad drug deal plot, if you want to.
Can we just quickly say a little something about Abed's apology?
Oh yeah, the rom-com apology that he does.
The rom-com, with one of the best sight gags, the guy who falls. And John, I love this exchange so much. You hired a stunt person. No, I did not.
No, I've just hurt someone by doing my gag.
That's the person who broke a rib. Yeah. So, and like that guy, like John. So that was a wide shot. That person did not fall on any cushions or anything. They just took like a legit fall.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
They did. They took a prat fall. Good stuff. This is, what's it remind you of the most? It's like a Jerry Maguire thing, right? That's what I get from it.
I was thinking Jerry Maguire, Say Anything. It kind of has those like holding the you know what? Oh, what's that old bit of media? That would have been a tape
A
deck, right?
boombox.
Boombox. Yeah, yeah.
You've never been fucking older than how you said boombox just now. You aged like Matt Damon in Saving Private Ryan.
It reminded me, I was watching videos of silly things George Bush said today. Did you know he called the internet the internets?
Oh, that fucking guy.
It was during a debate. He said something like, "So I saw the kids say you can find things on the internet." Like, oh boy, like this guy.
Who would have thought he would not have been the dumbest one? Who would have thought?
John, these videos are the best because it's the saying in Texas that I think they say in Tennessee: "If you fooled me once, shame on you. But if you fooled, you can't get fooled again."
Can't be fooled again. Because he forgot everything that goes with that.
Yeah, it's like you need to know the punchline before you know the setup if you're telling the joke. So yeah.
So
Yeah.
this other plot, we've got Jonathan Banks as who was Mike Armentrout in Breaking Bad, who does a great.
He's basically Mike here.
He's Mike
right?
here.
Yeah.
My favorite moment is when he flips his knife open and he cuts the books like it's a kilo of cocaine to test the good stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
That sets the tone for the entire thing, and then it plays out to me like a David Mamet play. Is how I feel.
I was about to say it feels like a play, does it not? Yeah.
It does. I just also found out David Mamet's a big MAGA dude. That makes me so upset, Colin.
Oh no.
I just had to throw it out there. It makes me so sad that
Always be closing my drawer full of David Mamet plays, so I'll never read them again. I got there. I can't get fooled again. So yeah, no, and like even the way they like John, even the way they like frame this set, it feels like a play basically. I mean, it feels like a teleplay in some respects.
Yeah,
you know?
it's a one. I mean, there's even like there's like the surprise reveal of when there's a moment when Chang enters, which would be sort of towards the third act of the play, when the plan is going on. We figured out the plan. We've just made who gets what cuts we're getting, and now here comes our fifth person. Now what do we have to do about this guy? You know, and even Shirley's like, Chang can't leave. He knows too much. And so she becomes this almost like mafioso sort of Don character for this whole thing. I loved it. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I told you again, just imagining that all of these references to Breaking Bad are deliberate. And we even see this change on her face, right? She almost goes full Heisenberg. And I told you, if you watch all of Breaking Bad, Bryan Cranston's really good about this. Like he slips into Heisenberg like it's a different identity sometimes, and I think to him it very much is, right. He has this, and it's interesting because you know like part of what you see with that character in Breaking Bad is this feeling that when he's not Heisenberg, he's this like bumbling, lacking figure. You know, he's a teacher at a high school. He's not professionally successful. His brother-in-law constantly degrades him. But John, when he becomes Heisenberg, he almost becomes this like non-lacking figure in some ways, which can't exist, but there's always the fantasy of it. And Shirley is super interesting in this respect because she's so timid at the beginning. And everyone, in the same way that they really criticize that Bryan Cranston character in Breaking Bad, she's a character who doesn't seem to be self-possessed or in power at all. But the minute she goes full Heisenberg, it's like she becomes this non-lacking figure, and you just see this change on her face. Yvette Nicole Brown's very good in this episode, in the same way that like Bryan Cranston's really good throughout Breaking Bad. It just, you know, slipping into these different registers, I guess.
You know, like one of the big notice, I didn't even notice it when I watched it, how she says Britta when she's in that character, because she normally goes Britta, you know, she does that.
Oh, she does.
Not here.
Yeah.
She's full on mean, you know, she's quick.
Yeah.
Britta, she's like right in the zone with that. So, yeah.
Do you get the sense like does she like drop a few octaves or something?
I feel like
when
she
she's
does. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I do too.
And her posture almost changes. She's very, very good. The best character to me, hands down, is Hickey. He is just, he's so good, man. He's so
He's
good.
very good. I mean, this is why he's so perfectly cast in Breaking Bad. He's so scary at times.
He's
you know?
very scary. He also, there's a moment at the very beginning when when Abed's like, it's our 1 month anniversary, and Hickey's like, oh yeah, happy anniversary. I should know your name. And she's like, I'm Rachel, and she holds her hand out to shake his hand, and he's like, that's enough. You can go now.
Yeah.
Hickey's one of those characters that, like, if he doesn't have to expend calories, he's not going to. So
No, I know. What's the exact line? I guess I should learn your name, young lady. I think that's what he says. Yeah, he
So
just
good.
like again, he's like partially sleepy anytime he delivers a line, except for this plot when he seems incredibly animated, which is interesting, right? Like, why is this the thing that would really animate him? I wonder what this suggests about his past, you know, because like he's been a little cagey. Like we knew he was a law enforcement official, but John, boy, oh boy, he feels like the kind of law enforcement official you would see in like The French Connection or something. Like this is probably a guy who's done some stuff that is definitely totally illegal. So
yeah, he's the kind of cop that Serpico would go after. He's a dirty.
Yeah,
he's a dirty cop.
I mean, how do you feel? I mean, how do you feel about that? Like this idea that maybe this episode implies that Hickey was maybe at times an unethical law enforcement official.
Yeah, I mean that's why he's at Greendale. I mean, otherwise, why the fuck else would he be there if he wasn't?
I mean, he's just one of those bad apples because there's always just the one bad apple.
Everyone at Greendale is a bad apple. That's why he's there.
That's true. Yeah, that's pretty good, right? And like that's the point is that but like this is the super interesting thing about like. Yeah, no, that's good, John. Yeah, he's a bad apple, so they're just a bushel of bad apples, basically. You know?
And so their whole, and I like when they bring every character is like a heist. They each have their certain jobs. You know, Hickey is for some reason the muscle, even though Jeff should be. Jeff's like the gopher almost. He just does what he's told. Situation, and then they bring in Britta, who is she's the go-between between the quote unquote dealer. And them, the supplier. And so she has a guy who she's going to offload these books to, but she wants half. And so they make this deal. And then when they're making the deal, Chang comes in, and Chang is now their hostage. I guess they're going to be their fall guy if something goes wrong. They pin it on him. They even record a video of him saying, that's why I stole all these books, so they can get away with it scot-free, because...
Which is perfect because, of course, Chang would do this.
He's crazy. Yeah. Chang would do this. And then, ultimately, we find out the books are worthless because they don't have any fucking page numbers printed in them. So, yeah. That's the story. It's wild. It's a good ride. It is a good ride, but no resolution at the end whatsoever.
Right. So this is what I wanted to talk about, John. No lesson. We don't have a moment when Jeff wingers us. It's just Shirley went full Breaking Bad. She betrayed everyone. And then once the heist went tits up, she just said nothing, untied them, and that was it.
And they all were cool with it. They all were like, oh, that's a bummer. And then they go back to their lives the next day when in reality, like, you're committing a pretty huge crime. You're stealing a bunch of things. Like, you're stealing a felony's worth of material. Genuinely, you are. I mean,
I suppose.
I guess there is the gray area where they may, quote unquote, forgot they were there, but obviously they didn't. They've put them there so no one will use them.
Right.
But I guess, like, that's the whole, is that, is it a crime? Is it not? It's a crime to charge these people that much for books, Colin. That's what I think the real crime is.
That's, I think, open educational resources or OER resources is the real crime here.
Yeah, you hear that? Download PDFs of your books, folks. They're free. Just go find them.
I strongly recommend people to do this. If I try to make as many materials available, I don't know why I'm saying this. Like I need to. It's like I feel guilty or something. Like
Colin's in on a heist
so
somewhere, and he's like, I got to explain this so the cops won't look at me.
What am I doing? What am I doing? Yeah, no, but like in all seriousness, I totally agree. Like this is one of the ways that like higher education has become so inaccessible to so many people is just the cost of textbooks, and it's just all a fucking racket, dude. Like fuck Norton. They're one of the worst perpetrators of this. Fuck them. Like I mean, I'm sorry, guys. Like Hamlet ain't changed no much in like 400 years. Okay, like I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, idiots. No, there was. I can remember when I left ETSU, and I had books from classes I'll never look at again, and I probably paid $300 for these, like 3 books.
Oh, it's insane.
And I sold them, and I got like $25. I thought, what the fuck is the point? Like, where's the disconnect at with this dog shit? I would also steal the books and sell them for profit too.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Do you know who the person is she sells them to at the end? Do you know who that is?
Yeah, who is this guy? Like he was in some of those like Hollywood Renaissance 70s films, right?
His name's Paul Williams. He wrote a ton of songs. He's a composer. He wrote like Rainbow Connection. He wrote that song, the famous Muppet tune. He wrote a bunch of songs for Three Dog Night. He's written a ton of songs. I know him from, there's this great movie called Phantom of the Paradise, which is like a Phantom of the Opera set in the 70s. I think it's at a mall. I can't even remember. No, it's like in a movie theater. Brian De Palma directed it. So
that's right. He was the villain.
He's the villain in that. Yeah. He's great. He's got that look. I also thought he was the guy from Harold and Maude, but he's not, even though they fucking look identical. Who is this? It's just like him, you know?
It's impossible to distinguish between the two.
It's eerie how much these two look alike.
Super eerie. Yeah. I mean, I guess like just to I don't know, punctuate this point about, well, why don't we have a moment when Jeff wingers all of them? It feels like the episode, again, maybe this is a way, even though the show will have episodes in the future, John, where Jeff does what he has done in other episodes, conventional, maybe season 2, season 3 episodes. This feels like the show formally, much like what we saw in the other plot, seeing and recognizing the things it's done in the past and maybe acknowledging that we need to move beyond that. This feels more serious in some ways. As silly as this narrative is, the lack of any kind of rhetorical move by Jeff to constitute all of this feels like the kind of thing you would see in a prestige television show, where you don't often have characters who make those kinds of rhetorical flourishes at the end as a way of framing all of it for us. Again, we, I think, as the audience, are really left to make sense of this ourselves. The show isn't giving that to us in the way it has in the past, and to be quite frank with you, in the way that a lot of sitcoms often do, because that's consistent with the sitcom form. So I think formally we're seeing this episode maybe attempting to move beyond itself in some ways.
I also think that for Jeff, this is a situation that's too far gone, and he realizes that. Like in most of the situations where he can do the winger speech, he still has a semblance of control. By the end of this, he's tied up because he wants to leave. So at this point, like Britta and Hickey and Shirley are all higher up than him within this like social hierarchy that he's created in his brain. So there's no way he's talking his way out of it, you know?
Yeah. And we saw that earlier in the season, right? When he tried to winger everyone in the cafeteria and they just threw food at him, right? No, this is, I think, John, that's a really nice point. Like, this is another moment where we're seeing whatever mythical power Jeff possessed in previous episodes and seasons. That's not what this new iteration of Community gives us, right? Jeff, in many ways, like this idea that Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, was he not the first person that Shirley tied to a chair? Is that correct?
No, Chang was, and then...
Okay, yeah, technically Chang,
and then,
I guess,
and then
right?
Jeff, because Jeff wants to leave as soon as they get Chang. And I mean, I think,
yeah.
it goes back to this point where without Troy, Jeff, everybody's powers are depleting, Troy is like sort of your nucleus that was boosting everyone else up. And because there's even that moment when Troy leaves where he looks at, he tells Jeff, "You're the coolest guy I know." And so that obviously gave Jeff some type of power that maybe he didn't know he had, subconsciously. He had more confidence when Troy was around. And now it's gone. Now he's just second fiddle to the insanity that is happening around him. I think that's what I get from it.
Which is fascinating because, again, if you imagine, like, if Troy was the real hero, it was easy for Jeff to then be nothing more than a symbolic hero, right? Because he didn't have the responsibility of actually being the real hero. Like, because could you imagine if Troy were here? Like, this narrative does not happen if Troy is here, right?
Absolutely, yeah, you're right.
But again, the absence of Troy potentially creates the conditions for something like this to happen. Not that this group has not indulged in like nefarious, quasi illegal hijinks in the past, but yeah, especially the way Shirley behaves. It feels like, again, this is another. That's good, John. This is another moment where the episode almost wants to thematically connect the A and the B plot, right? Again, what sorts of things happen without Troy? Well, this is maybe a thing that happens without Troy.
Jeff is Frodo and Troy is Samwise. I have fixed this.
How do you know if it needed fixing?
He's saying he's the real hero. Samwise Gamgee's the real hero of Lord of the Rings. Everybody knows that.
Oh, you think so? Okay.
What the fuck are you talking about? Everybody knows that's the thing. Who's the real hero?
I don't.
Frodo? Wrong.
I don't know if there is
Gandalf?
one.
Possibly.
Well, I mean, if you consider the Shakespearean influences, maybe Aragorn as the king.
No, I do like Vigo. I love some Viggo Morgenstein. That guy.
Oh, Vigo.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. He could give me the One Ring anytime. I was trying to figure out how to be more sexualized with that. But now I guess the One Ring could be a butthole. It doesn't matter, Colin. That's all I have to say about this episode. Anything else you want to do before we move on? I'm sorry tonight was so silly, guys. I apologize. I'm so sorry.
He can sheath his sword in my Mount Doom.
Vigo, I'm just nothing but a ring wraith for you, buddy. Meet me on Weathertop.
Shit, John. Okay, John.
Fuck.
Segments, John. Who makes the Dean's List for you? Who is your best performance?
Shirley. She's great for all the reasons we've talked about. She's good at becoming two different characters. She's also really sort of scary at times, but she's also still quite funny. I liked her a lot in this. What about you?
Yeah, I think mine's actually Shirley as well. I know we agree on this often, but mine's Shirley as well. Because you and I, we didn't really talk about this a lot. I don't know if there's anything really to say, Season 4, I think one of the more positive aspects is that it at times gave Shirley a little more to do in this episode. And John, think about it. We've had 2 consecutive episodes that feel like Shirley-centric episodes. This is really quite fantastic. And again, this is an episode that allows Shirley to function as the primary, but the point, the plot, it is not about her as a mother or her as an evangelical Christian. And so I think that's incredibly interesting too. John, I need you to check the syllabus because I need you to identify your favorite bit of intertextual referencing or metatextual play. What do you got?
I mean, I guess it's just that the whole B plot is just a Breaking Bad episode wrapped up in like an 8-minute one-act play. I really like that. What about you, buddy?
Mine's Britta's Everyone. Again, from
so
the
she
professional.
says everybody because she has to Britta it.
Yeah, she does. This has happened.
Everybody.
Yeah, this has happened a couple of times. Annie gave us one earlier in the season, if you remember.
She did, yeah. Do you like The Professional?
It's been a minute since I've watched it, but I remember liking it when I watched it. I'll say that.
Luc Besson's The Professional, Natalie Portman's first feature film. Did you know that?
Correct. I did know that, yeah.
She's Matilda. A gift from Matilda. And then he dies. Spoiler alert for The Professional from 1994.
Flawless impression.
My Jean Reno is very good.
Have you flown a helicopter through a train tunnel, John? Because
perhaps.
That was perhaps. So.
Perhaps I have. Listen, don't knock. Two of my favorite films when I was younger, Mission Impossible and Ronin, both have Jean Reno.
He's
as a side character. He's phenomenal.
He's fantastic.
Ronin also written by David Mamet, bringing it back around everybody.
There it is.
There it is.
Also in the drawer because I'm not.
Fuck him.
Closed it. John, best lines.
Oh my God, I didn't write any down, Colin. You go ahead, throw them at me.
Butter noodles are my favorite. That's the thing Abed says. Part of the Dean's rap. Barack Obama is scared of me because I don't swallow knowledge and spit it for free.
That's a great moment.
Holy shit. Did you see Gillian Jacobs do a 2-camera take and they kept it? She looks in the camera. Like right in the camera. It's awesome. Yeah.
That's one of the best moments of the show.
It's awesome.
The peanut rap.
It's so fantastic. Good. Yeah. Is it cool if I poop? No, Anthony, just keep cutting the carrots. And then I think Abed at some point says, I don't think you heard what he said. So
yeah.
I guess it was just air, dude. That's something Anthony says. Very funny. Just a little Protestant humor. I got more. That's a thing Shirley says. Dude, this is a Hickey line. It's from whom by whom, but he nailed the third one. That was pretty funny. Dude, Abed says this so fast. Rachel used to mop floors when she worked at Kmart. She mops good.
That's very good.
And then the Bing Bang 5, I think someone says that at one point. Why do you have so much access to rope? I think someone asked Tiki that. It was very funny. You hired a stunt person. No, I did not. And then Abed, you can hear this as the episode ends. He says, we played pile bullets.
Oh, we should also give a shout out to Gina Gershon. She's in this
so
at the end.
funny,
She's
dude.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Gina Gershon, who shaped my youth when I was a teenager because of the film Bound with her and Jennifer Tilly. Lordy day. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. God bless the Wachowskis in that movie.
Yeah.
Hachi-machi.
I think it did a lot for a lot of people in a variety of different ways, if I were to guess.
It did. I actually watched a documentary. They mentioned that and how it was like very eye-opening. And it was really, it was a good representation of queers in media at the time because that really wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like 14. It was the best movie that's ever been made in the history of cinema.
Yeah.
So.
No, because I'm thinking like there's a lot of like wonderful books and documentaries about the history of queer cinema, John, and like mid 90s, like the pinnacle of queer cinema in scare quotes was like Philadelphia or something,
Yeah.
And so Bound. Hey, who would have known? Directed by 2 lesbians, right? Yeah, who would have known?
It's fascinating because they talked about how the love scenes in that film is like if you're a queer woman, how they're so good. And now Jennifer Tilly was like, I realize now because it was directed by 2 women, that's why it's so good.
Yeah.
Bound, great film. Also, it's a great little noir film.
Very cool.
But it is very, very steamy, very spicy little movie.
I was also thinking like the pinnacle of like progressive quasi queer cinema was like Chasing Amy, but now you look back and you're like, that's not great. That's not great. That's not good. It's like, boy, 1995 standards were troubling to say the least. So
what a movie. Chasing Amy. Someday we'll have to talk about Chasing Amy.
Yeah, because
I have many thoughts.
Yeah, like I mean, even the idea that to my knowledge, none of the main cast, I think they're all straight actors, which it's 1995, whatever. But like, from what I remember, like people really hung their hat on like the rather candid conversation that Ben Affleck and what's the do you remember the female actor's name? I don't remember her name.
Joey Lauren Adams.
Yeah, like they have a conversation about like sex and losing your virginity and he like dude he sounds like someone he basically sounds like Matt Walsh where he's like, well, so you're still a virgin. And she's like, virginity is not about, like that kind of like heterosexual penetration. Correct. Right? And like in 95, like this is the most progressive movie I've ever seen. But then there's like stuff like about like can I successfully like turn a lesbian straight, and it's not good, kids. It's not good. Yeah.
How's that going to get a Criterion release and Mallrats is just hanging out to dry? The pinnacle of cinema is what I'll say.
Mallrats doesn't have a Criterion? No way.
Are you for real? Of course it doesn't have a Criterion. Dude,
I love Mallrats.
Do you think somebody that I mean, Brody sticks his fucking hand up his ass to give somebody a stink palm. You think that's going to be in a Criterion movie?
Dude, the stink palm is...
Wait, that doesn't have a Criterion? Unbelievable. Unreal. When Willem ruins a bunch of kids' lives and tells them the Easter Bunny's not real because he can't see a Magic Eye poster. I've seen that movie so many times. I love that movie. I fucking love. And Clerks doesn't have a Criterion, which it should. Clerks should have a Criterion release.
I think Clerks does have a Criterion. Does it not?
It does not.
No, you would know better than I would.
What are you fucking talking about? Yeah. What are you talking to here, kid? Huh? What are you doing?
I love the smell of commerce in the morning because I like to hang out at malls in the late 90s. So, that movie was just. It was great. Someday we'll revisit that. Maybe we should Patreon that someday. That'd be fantastic. Mallrats is the best, man. Yeah, it's just I love Mallrats so much.
I do too. It's a warm blanket of a film for me, and I truly, truly love it. Anyway, Colin, that's it for our conversation of the VCR maintenance and I can't remember the last half. Educational publishing.
Maybe.
Did I get there? I got there.
She said you're callow. That means frightened and weak-willed. I thought it was a compliment.
Man.
John, hey, we have a Patreon page.
Oh, my God. We have a Patreon page. For $3 a month, you become a patron. You can hear us banter like this. Not as silly. We were extra silly tonight. That doesn't happen that often. I'm glad it did. It was a fun time. For $3 a month, you get all the exclusive content. This month, we're talking about drag and pro wrestling. Colin sent me some
I'm really interested
essays,
in this.
So we're going to discuss this. I'm pretty stoked. I'm a big pro wrestling fan for this.
I
you
know.
Didn't know.
Yeah.
So for $3 a month, you can hear that. It should be coming out at the end of this month. Above that, for $7 a month, you get a sticker. You become a producer of the show. We talk about you every single episode. Above that, you get a shirt, a sticker, all the content. You're also a producer. Above that, you come over. We'll watch David Cronenberg's Videodrome, which is sitting here on the corner of my desk. That's why I said
Look at that.
So we'll watch Videodrome. It does have James Woods in it. Before he was a piece of shit, though, I think. Who knows? Might always been.
We will not watch a David Mamet film. We can guarantee.
We'll not watch that. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. We'll watch John Waters' Polyester. I also have that here on the corner of my desk. So we'll watch this together if you are above a $15 producer. Colin.
John.
Let's thank some producers, shall we?
Let's do it. Thank you to the following producers of the Hop-Ons podcast. Thank you to Katana Crindy, Rachel, Kate, Daniel, Lars, Rob, Robin, Jeff, and Andrew. And John's right. The Patreon link is the first one in the show notes. John, the threadless link, if anyone wanted to buy Hop-Ons podcast merchandise, is in the second. It is the second link in the show notes. And John, if someone were so inclined as to rate and review the podcast, what would you say? What would I say?
That's it. Oh, you kidding me? Hey, forget about it. I would read your review here on the air. If you want me to read it like that, I would. I don't know why you would, but hey, ratings and reviews genuinely help the show get noticed. So we move on up the ranks when someone searches for Community, Arrested Development, or Twin Peaks in their podcatcher of choice.
Yeah, and I think this is in the show notes now. Just to remind everyone, I'm trying to put new episodes on our YouTube page. And John, I don't know if you can leave ratings and reviews on YouTube, but Deadline63 has left a couple of comments. I thought I would read this one to you since it's at the end, because this is relevant. John at the end gets me every time when he does the spiel.
The spiel.
Always look forward to them. Another fantastic conversation and recap, gents. Well done as always. Thank you, Deadline
That's
63.
very, very sweet of you. It's hard for me off the cuff to come up with the dumbest shit imaginable, so I do appreciate that a lot. The episode we put out last week was so funny. The Scott Stapp stuff. I listened to that 25 times over in my car, and it just makes me laugh so much. Sometimes we have like pinnacle funniness on this show, and I think the Don Cheadle joke, obviously, this episode, I'm sure got a lot of people going. So
yeah,
thanks for that.
Right?
Thank you for that.
Who knows? Who knows what makes people laugh? But yeah, John, I think that's it for the Hop-Ons podcast. My name is Colin Cox.
My name is Kelsey Grammer. I'll see you in Peacock this fall when I bring my show back with my son, David Cross.
I'll bring the scrambled eggs and salad.